Let's see. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's weekly training webinar for all the members here of Tax Sale Support. I'm Shade Foray here with Stephen Swenson as usual. I think we were gone last week, right?
Yeah.
And but in fact, yeah, it's been crazy ever since then. Trying to get caught up with just things we missed during that time and everything else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. It's good to be back though, and be talking with our members. We have quite a few, a lot of members that registered for today's auction. So if you have any questions as we go through, go ahead and ask them in the chat section. If we're not able to get to all your questions, just go ahead and send them to us in the form or in the email if we can't get to all of them. But today we want to talk about something that, me and Shade are always talking about tax deeds so often that I think sometimes we neglect all of the advantages and the opportunities with tax lien investing.
yeah, we do have a tendency to I think to overlook it because we do get pretty focused on just property. But the reality is, tax liens are an incredible investment that are really easy, and for a lot of people, they're going to work out well. In fact, a lot of you that we've talked with want to be invested in both. In fact, they don't mind buying liens and yeah, I think that the liens really, for what you're doing and the amount of work that goes into it, they really are one of the easiest, best investments. I mean, there's highly secured investments that bring a high interest rate return, which is just, it's hard to mix the two normally.
Yeah, and if you don't want to be involved with buying property and trying to sell property, you can't get a better investment than tax lien investing. And if you do end up with the property, you're getting it for such a steal that selling it is incredibly easy because you usually bought the property from anywhere between 3 to 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you were sitting on enough capital, it would be worth putting some money into liens. I mean, essentially, that's what banks do. But yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of things related to tax liens here tonight, just because we do cover deeds so often, and I think everybody you need to be familiar with the lien stuff and how it works, even if you're primarily targeting deeds, because at some point you may want to buy the liens. I think it's also a part of understanding how the system works as a whole.
Well, and there's probably half of our students that are just interested in liens,
Yeah.
of our members, because not everyone wants to go through all of the steps that you have to do with tax deed investing. And when you're investing in liens, really just a basic amount of due diligence can usually help you choose and pick right liens that are safe investments.
Yeah, in fact, it's really one of the I think one of the major benefits of tax lien investing is that they don't require a lot of due diligence.
Yeah.
That they're pretty safe investment for the most part. They're the type of thing that you could wander into a tax sale and buy liens, at random and probably end up just fine in terms of the security of your investment and earning a good high interest rate return on them.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that part of understanding liens in the beginning is understanding really what exactly a tax lien is, what gives it power, and how it works. Because if you don't understand that, a lot of other things are not really going to make sense about the way that it works. So really, when we're talking about a tax lien, it is a legal claim that is placed against real property, real estate specifically, but it's a claim against assets that's filed by a taxing authority against a delinquent taxpayer, essentially. The lien itself, though, has some tremendous power because it's issued by that taxing authority. That lien is what's known as a first position lien.
Yeah, exactly. And when they talk about liens, there's different types of liens, and a tax lien is a first position lien, and we'll get into some of those different types of details about tax liens. But essentially, it is the government's form of that claim against the asset. they're issuing that lien. So it's a legal form, it's a legal procedure that really kind of goes through the courts where they place that lien against the property.
Right. And the object of a lien is to I guess on one end it is to collect the delinquent amount that's owed. On the other end, it is to allow the property owner to keep their property, which is an important. It's important, I think, to the property tax systems in the United States. It, is allowing owners to keep their property, maintain and have their property. They try to give owners every chance they can. That's really what the tax liens are all about. It's all about presenting to the county a solution to their issue of not having the money that they need in order to operate, but also it doesn't just take property away from property owners that are delinquent.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, there's 3 different tax lien types, but we're going to talk about tax liens tonight. And so, like Shade said, essentially these liens are the enforcement method that the county used to collect property taxes. So these are going to be liens against real property, and real property is essentially real estate and anything attached to it. So something like a single family home or a commercial building would be some type of structure.
Yeah, and a couple things to note about liens, about a tax lien when it's placed against property. When a lien is issued against property, it doesn't utilize just a portion of the property. It utilizes the entire property. So it goes against the entire property. It doesn't really matter what the amount of the lien is or the amount of the property, because the lien basically holds that property hostage. I mean, literally, the lien could be, if it's a first position lien for $500 and the property was worth $50,000 or even $100,000, it could be used to foreclose on the property. Just by the nature of the way that the liens work. They utilize that entire property as collateral for the debt that's owed. So when a tax lien is placed against the property, it's going to utilize that entire property as collateral, meaning that if it results in foreclosure, the property, will be lost.
Yeah, essentially what we're doing is we're giving the county a loan. We're paying off, really we're giving the property owner a loan through the county, and the county's issuing a lien against that property that guarantees our investment. So it's going to be guaranteed by state law, and it also going to be guaranteeing us an interest rate return. So that's part of the strategy of taxing certificates, is you're going to earn usually a double-digit return, 10, 12, 14, 18% off of the investment, for a year period. So essentially you're earning that interest over a year.
Yeah, in fact, that's an important point with it, is that is your objective, is to earn that high interest rate return. It's not really to acquire property. Otherwise, you're going to end up being disappointed all the time when these liens end up redeeming. But the vast majority of the liens are going to end up redeeming, and that's kind of the whole point of them. Like Steve said there, in a way, it's like the county being able to get a loan on the delinquent taxes that are owed. Or basically the county selling that delinquent debt off to investors.
Yeah, it really is a win-win-win situation, because the investor is winning because he's earning the interest rate. The county is winning because they're getting the money that they need to pay all of the budget and all of the bills that they need to. And the homeowner or the property owner is winning because essentially they're not losing their property. They're just getting an interest against it, which is really, even though it's a great interest rate return, it's still, pretty fair compared to really what the loan is against. And so sometimes property owners will knowingly not pay their property taxes and think, well, I'll just pay the 6 months worth of interest because I get my money when, I'm getting a bonus or whatever at this certain time. So it's just better for me to hold on to the money now.
Yeah. In fact, I think if we were to try to simplify it a little bit with tax liens, the main thing to know about tax liens, aside from the fact that they're issued by a government, especially when it comes to tax liens, they're issued by the governing authority that issues the liens. But it is that every lien is issued with a redemption period. So every tax lien that's issued has a type of due date, or it has a countdown, that begins on the date of the auction, where basically that acts as a grace period for the property owner. It's the time period that the property owner has to pay off their taxes before they, before they can lose the property to foreclosure.
Yeah, exactly. Each one's going to have that redemption period. They're going to have a set interest rate return that's going to be guaranteed through state mandate. And so, each essential state will determine what that interest rate is, and some states will give the county some flexibility in what the interest rates are.
Yeah. So when it comes to interest rate returns, again, they are something that accrue every month that you're earning. So in other words, on the interest rate that you earn, if it's 14%, you're going to earn a little bit more than 1 point something percent. It's going to be 1.2%, or
Yeah.
I don't know what the exact amount would be here, but there we go. For the most part, though, interest rates tend to range between about 12%, it seems like, up to about as high as 18%, 24, I guess, in some cases, but I think 18 is about as high as we normally see.
Yeah, and just like you see there, that 18% is going to be broken up over 12 months, so it'd be 1.5% per month. And one thing we're going to talk about a little bit further in detail later on is the interest rate you're going to be earning is going to be calculated off the face amount. And so in a little while, we'll talk about what the difference is, but that's something to keep in mind when we talk about it here in a bit.
Yeah. Let's see here. The early payoff penalty, whoops. It jumps it pretty fast there. Florida has an early payoff penalty that basically applies to liens that pay off early, which I think is liens in Florida that pay off in the first 12 months.
Yeah.
Right? They automatically pay out a flat 5% on.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit, there aren't too many states that have early payoff penalties, but there are some. Florida's the main one, though. So if you were to buy a tax lien in Florida that redeemed in that first 12 months, you'd earn a flat 5%.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why some of the institutional investors, really kind of bid those interest rates low, is because, they knew through their numbers that a certain percentage of their liens are going to redeem within the first, 90 days, and they're going to make 5% off that.
Yeah.
And in addition with whatever, interest they're going to make off their property.
Right, and the ability to make a flat 5% return on an investment in a short period of time, and in a lot of cases it was happening within the first 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Is a great return, especially when it's as secure as a tax lien is. So yeah, essentially, every portion of a month counts as a month. But they pay out in whole months, and it accrues, and you basically get a check in the mail when it redeems, which is nice. You don't really have to do anything. The county is going to calculate everything in most cases for you, and will basically cut you a check for your initial investment plus the interest that you accrued or earned up to that point.
Yeah.
So they are very easy and simple in that way. We talked a little bit about redemption periods. They range, but the redemption period is important to pay attention to when you're buying them, because it basically represents the time period when you can take action and start to try to foreclose on it, which with a lot of liens is what it takes.
Yeah. As far as the redemption periods, usually they're going to range anywhere from 1 year to 4 years is kind of generally. Usually it's about 2 to 3 years. In most cases, some states will be a little bit longer. And the state's going to decide what that redemption period is. But when it comes to redemption periods, that's essentially how long the property owner has before you can foreclose on the property. So they need to pay it by the end of that redemption period. So if it's a 2-year redemption period, like Florida, then 2 years from the date of the auction, you can essentially foreclose on the property.
The other important point is just that redemption period begins on the date of the sale, whether the lien was sold or not. So even if it's sitting on the books, it still has that time that's ticking away there on it. So if you're looking at over-the-counter liens, they'll have a reduced amount of time that's left on the redemption period. You basically can go off of the original date of the auction.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, when it comes to the bidding systems, essentially, there's going to be 4 or 5 different bidding systems that are going to be used. Primarily, it's going to be bid down the interest rate, and some counties will use premium bidding. And then in some cases, like in more rural states like Wyoming, places like that, they may do rotational bidding. Usually in those situations, the list isn't more than a couple of hundred properties. And so these are going to be the primary, these are going to be the bidding methods that you use, but it's really going to be, the most common is going to be bid down the interest rate, and in some cases premium bidding.
Yeah, and really the premium bidding is really only used in a handful of places. Really, if you think about it, like places like Maryland, that use, I guess, a true premium system, where they have.
And what there's Colorado does as well. As long as you do the premiums right, they can still be a pretty good investment. You just need to be careful on how much how much you bet over the tax lien, because, and also kind of what the state laws are. Are you going to earn interest off that? Aren't you?
Yeah, which portion of it you earn interest on. But essentially, between the bid down the interest though and the premium system, you're going to have the bulk of the liens, and I guess rotational bidding.
Yeah, well, the rotation or the random selection, those are going to be more rare. But if you can attend one, usually they're going to be a pretty good investment, because you're not bidding down the interest rate is all. You get the guaranteed interest. You're not bidding up the price. You just can't choose which tax liens you can purchase. But usually the list isn't going to be that big. So if it's only 100 properties or 120 properties, there may only be 10 properties on that list that you're going to avoid. So when the lien comes up to you, you're usually going to buy the lien. You just can't pick which liens, but me and Shade have both purchased liens this way and have been redeemed on all of our liens.
You can generally tell by the lien amount. With a sale like that, because they're not throwing their junk out. If it hits a higher dollar lien.
But you bought like a $60 or $70 lien, and I bought like a $120 lien at that auction. Both of them redeemed.
Yeah, everything from those sales redeem, and that's how it works in a lot of cases. You don't get a lot of property that's foreclosing in some places. In some places you do. To buy liens though, really, you can do it through live or online auctions now, which are becoming more and more common, or you can also buy them over the counter after the sale. I think like anything else, a lot of the best opportunities are going to get picked up at the auction, although there's always opportunities left over if you're willing to look hard enough.
Yeah, especially if you're willing to look in places where maybe it's not the most, sexy state. Something like maybe over the counters in Nebraska. Or even though the process is a little weird, over the counters in North Carolina, or not North Carolina, sorry, in Montana or in South Carolina.
Yeah.
There's different types of opportunities. Now, when it comes to live on-site auctions, these are still going to be the most common type of auction taking place in the United States. In fact, we've probably downloaded 150 new lists, or we're in the process of uploading those lists to the website, of tax lien auctions taking place in Indiana. I think we have about 50 auctions in Kentucky, in New Jersey, in a bunch of different states where you can essentially attend these auctions and purchase these tax liens through one of the live sales.
Yeah, and I think we always encourage people to attend the live sales if you have them going on. In a lot of cases, you will have live sales, that are taking place. The online auctions are something that a lot of people here are going to be interested in, and there are many companies out there, and so there's a lot of them that you can become familiar with and get to know. Some of the main online auction companies that work out there we come across are Real Auction, Grant Street Group, SRI Auctions, Bid for Assets. And there's a number of others, that we end up going to as well, like some of the Michigan stuff. And,
there's probably a dozen different others where maybe it's just properties through the state.
Yeah.
Could be even their own auction website for that particular county. But most of the auctions will have a lot of tools that make the auctions really easy to participate in. So they're going to have online auction lists with links to the property records and to the information, so that it's fairly easy to research, and they also are pretty easy to navigate and participate in the auction as well.
Yeah, in fact, everything that the county is doing there with online auctions is meant to make the process easier for the buyer.
Yeah, they even have practice auctions on some of them where you can practice bidding and buying liens without actually buying them, just to get the feel of how the system works so that you're ready to go once the auction comes up.
Yeah. In fact, over the counter is another way that you can approach it, and each one of those. Over the counter investing, I think, is something that a lot of people like. I like the process of looking for opportunities with over the counter investing, although a lot of times we can find stuff there, but sometimes not. Sometimes the over the counter stuff is it's not. Sometimes the list runs dry basically in some areas, but over the counter investing is kind of a fun way to go about it, where you're basically looking for the leftovers.
Yeah, essentially these were tax liens that were offered at the sale that didn't sell. So, you're going to be going through and researching some of these over-the-counter lists. And like Shade said, there's going to be a lot of junk on that list, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be good gems throughout the list. You can even find good tax liens that are maybe just a couple of $100, and maybe they're not on something like a single-family home, but they're on a $15,000 or $20,000 building lot, and they don't have a ton of tax liens on it. Maybe they only have one other tax lien or one other year's worth of tax liens on the property. So if you decide to foreclose on the property, you're only spending a few $100s to foreclose on it. Good chance it's going to sell at the auction, and you're going to get your money back in a state like, if you were purchasing in a state like Florida, for example. So, when it comes to over the counters, even though there is going to be a lot more junk out there, there's still going to be great opportunities, especially once the auction has happened. Once that fresh list comes out, that's usually going to be the best time. And then in searching other places that other investors aren't focusing on, like we talked about South Carolina or Nebraska or some of these other states.
Yeah, in fact, really the two biggest benefits associated with over-the-counter tax liens are going to be earning the maximum interest rate return, so you're not competing with that. That's always a major benefit, knowing you're going to earn that maximum rate, but also having some of that time that has worked off of that redemption period. So that the time period you have to wait before you can take action is even reduced, a bit there. And yeah, there are tons of opportunities out there with over-the-counter liens, especially. We find over-the-counter liens are common, to find good stuff out there, because again, they're liens. It's not property itself. They're just liens, and so there's a lot of times we're able to find some pretty good inventory in a number of counties. When it comes to tax lien and the due diligence that you do, there are a couple of things that we're going to talk about here that are important, and these are going to be the things that will help you pick out good liens, help you avoid problem liens, and so the main things we're going to talk about here are the face amount versus redemptive amount or redemption amount, and we're going to talk about lien to value ratio, and we're going to talk about tax lien roll-up.
Yeah, essentially these three things are what's going to help prevent you from making mistakes in your investments. As long as we check the lien to value ratio, the tax lien roll up, and we're purchasing tax liens on property that have use and value, we're going to be making a good investment. So it doesn't matter on what type of property it is, as long as it has use and value, meaning, if it's some type of piece of land, it can be built upon or has some type of value. And if it's, structured property, obviously has value there. But we'll go through it and make sure you understand each one of these.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you're going to want to look for if you're buying liens somewhere new for the first time is it's going to be a good idea to read through the instructions, and usually auction instructions will help give you an idea. But if not, reading through the actual state laws will also give you an idea here of how this works, because a lot of times the difference here between face amount versus redemptive value is something that is specified in state law, which is why they do it the way they do. But essentially, what it comes down to is the way that the tax lien pays interest.
Yeah, exactly. The face amount is going to be the amount of the tax lien on the day it was issued at the auction. So essentially, once that tax lien has been issued on the day of the sale, that's going to be the face amount, and that is usually going to be the amount that we're going to earn our interest rate off of. So if we're buying the tax lien, and it's $1,000 tax lien, we're essentially going to be making our interest, our 18% off that $1,000 tax lien.
Yeah, but if that lien, let's say it wasn't purchased and it sat on the books for a little while, then as we went to go buy, let's say we wanted to buy it a year after that, okay, and it had been sitting there for an entire year. In order for us to buy it, it would no longer be $10,000. It would be $10,000 plus the basically the interest that had accrued or added up to that point that was owed. So the price that we would have to pay at that point would basically be the redemptive value. I'm sorry, if we were to go to buy the lien at that point, it wouldn't be. We're still earning interest on that original $1,000. But in order to buy it, we're paying more than that because of the added interest that's accrued.
Yeah, exactly. If we bought $1,000 lien, or if the day of the auction the lien was $1,000 and we bought it a year after it'd been on the books, and now it was $1,200, we would have to pay $1,200, but we would be making interest off the $1,000. So that's why it's important also that redemptive value is the amount that the property owner is going to have to pay off when they redeem their property. So really what the redemptive value is just that interest and penalties that's being added to that amount each month. So each month that interest that you're earning is essentially added into the redemptive value, the value of the amount of the total amount of the lien.
Now, the reason why this is important is because if you get some over-the-counter lists in counties where they have liens that have been sitting on the books for a while, as they sit on the books longer, that face amount, compared to the redemptive value, that gap begins to grow. And what you'll end up with sometimes are, liens that might cost you, X amount, $1,000, but that have a face value though of $200 or something like that, where you basically get liens that are becoming more and more toxic, essentially.
Yeah, and even if you had $1,000 lien, but it had been on the books for 5 years, and now it's $2,000, even if it made a good investment and you bought that tax lien, and because it's over the counter, you're essentially making 18%. You would cut that 18% in half, because now the lien's $2,000 versus the $1,000.
Yeah.
So you're cutting your interest in half because you're making the interest off that face value. So that's really the most important thing when you're looking at over the counters, is to look at that face value and realize, okay, I'm going to be making 14% or 18%, not off the 500 or not off the 1,000, but whatever that, whatever, not off what the current amount of the tax lien is, whatever it was when it was initially offered to sell.
Amount was.
Yeah.
And you should be able to see at different points. In fact, in some cases, you can see they'll show you how the redemptive value is increasing every month, by a certain number of dollars, and basically that's just them quantifying the interest that's earned for every month.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like the example shows, $100 tax lien, 18% would be 118 when you would purchase it a year later.
Yeah. So let's see here. Now, the lien to value ratio, this is going to be the really something you look at with every lien that you look at, just the way you do with every deed as well. I mean, I think we automatically do deed to value ratios every time we look at a property. Well, it's the same when you're looking at tax liens. You want to look at what the lien to value ratio is, and obviously the lower the percentage, the better in terms of the overall security of the investment.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, we're just evaluating the lien amount versus the property value, and the lower that amount, the better the investment's going to be.
Yeah. So I think most people are going to understand, how this works. Now, the exact number on what the difference is between good lien and a bad lien varies between counties because counties have different annual costs. The cost, I guess, they have different property tax rates in different places. And so in some places you can find good tax liens that are 1% or 0.5% in some cases of what the property's value is. But in other cases you might find in some counties places where it seems like it's closer to 3% or 5%.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that we'll be looking at. Usually it's going to be around 1 to 2%, but there is cases, especially in some areas where, it's been, like you said, anywhere between 3 to 5%. But the higher the property value, the higher the lien percentage can be, essentially. So as we're looking, if we're looking at a property that's higher value, then it's going to be okay if we pay a little bit more for the lien.
Yeah.
If we're looking at a $10,000 lot and the lien's $2,000, well, that could, potentially be an expensive investment. But if we're looking at a $200,000 property and the lien's $20,000, there's a lot more profit within that type of deal.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that those numbers are right. As the value goes up, the percentage can also change there pretty dramatically. But yeah, I think if you were to look at it like a $1,000 lien versus $100,000 property, I think to say that most of them are going to be between 1 to 8% on average, I think is going to be true. Now, this is also where we start to get into roll up and how the roll up with it works. And basically, what's important to note here is that one of the powers that a tax lien has is it prevents the transfer of ownership. Okay, so in fact, it's probably its main power, that it has is aside from foreclosure abilities, is it prevents the owner from being able to transfer ownership on the property until the lien has been taken care of. Well, when counties have delinquent taxes, taxes are basically collected every year, and for many counties, they'll issue a new tax lien every year if there are delinquent taxes. So basically, in order to foreclose on the property, in order to take possession of it, one of the things that's going to have to happen is that the property taxes are going to have to be current. Another way of saying that is that if there's other liens that exist against the property, they're going to have to be paid off in order for the property ownership to be transferred. So what you're looking at with the roll-up really is looking at the rest of the past due taxes that are owed on the property in order to foreclose on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you want me to do?
Oh yeah, just essentially, I think we've got an example here in a minute. You kind of already explained what the roll-up was, but we've got kind of an example to show kind of what, roll-up would essentially come down to. So, if we're looking at this tax lien certificate from 2014, it's $1,000 tax lien on a $10,000 building lot. It may essentially look like, oh, well, pick up this property. If we get it for $1,000, it'll be a good deal. But in looking into this particular tax lien, we can see that there's tax liens on it going from 2010 to 2015, starting at $900 and going up to $1,800. So the actual amount to foreclose on this property isn't going to be that $1,000. It's essentially going to be almost $8,000 to foreclose on the property. And this is actually an example that you can see different types of properties that are underwater like this, or essentially what we call toxic tax liens or high risk.
Yeah, there are a lot of toxic tax liens out there. And if you think about it, the problem in what's happened here is the property's been allowed, it's sat for too many years, basically, and you can see how that amount turns it into a toxic lien. Because if it had been foreclosed on in the first 2 years the way that the property should have been, in a lot of cases
probably would have been a great investment.
Yeah, it would have been a great investment, but instead every year it sat there, that initial, those liens just kept adding up, and the oldest liens end up getting enormous.
Yeah, and as they sit on there, and so you can see, the 2015 is the lowest amount of lien at 900, then it goes up to 1,000, 1,200, 14, 16, 18, and that's because essentially they're earning their interest year after year on all of those liens. So each one of those liens is essentially earning whatever interest rate they were guaranteed. Uh, each one of those are essentially, combining every single year, which is going to raise that price at amount. So in looking at this property, in just looking at the surface, we could say, oh, well, maybe it's going to be an okay property. But as we look into the details, we can determine that this is going to be a toxic property. If you can avoid these type of properties, if you can go through and just do this basic research, you're going to be making good investments.
Yeah.
Generally, we look, unless the property has high value, you're looking for no less than 2 to 5 years worth of delinquent taxes on a property.
Yeah. You basically want to
A couple years after the redemption period.
You basically want to avoid properties that have been sitting there for too long, because it just gets too expensive, after a while. And I think we'll get the chance to look at some examples. In fact, I was looking at some liens today that were just like that. Basically, when we're looking for low risk liens, what we're really talking about are the liens that are most likely to redeem. And those are the liens that are basically placed against properties that people are the most likely to retain, the properties that people are not going to allow to go to foreclosure, which is the vast majority of property out there. It's going to be 95, 98% of the property out there is going to be stuff that people want to keep. But the more use and value the property has, the more likely it is that it's going to get paid off. And that's something that you have to think about all the time when you're considering, the type of lien that you want to invest or buy, because ultimately that's what you're looking for, the liens that are most likely to redeem.
Yeah, and you don't have to shy away. You don't necessarily have to shy away from lower dollar liens as long as the property has good use and value. You can find $200, $300, $500 liens that are on valuable pieces of property, compared to the amount of the liens. So even though it's maybe a lower dollar lien, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad investment.
Yeah, and when it comes to liens, you can try to target property. You can try to target liens that are more likely to go to foreclosure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can. In fact, there are liens. Some counties have so many over-the-counter liens on their books that they have liens that are eligible to initiate the foreclosure process just sitting there, on their books. Or if you're to buy the lien, you can basically initiate foreclosure almost immediately.
Yeah, there's certain strategies, like we said, 95% of your tax liens are going to redeem, but there's certain strategies that can increase your chances to maybe 20% or 30% or maybe even higher, 40% on certain type of liens. And we can go through and kind of quickly talk about it. But these are essentially your low risk lien types. It's just going to be any property that has use and value. So it doesn't matter if it's residential land or raw land or any type of structured property. As long as it has use and value, it should be good to go.
Yeah. In fact, the majority of property would fall under the low risk category in terms of the types of property that's out there. The high risk types of property are ones that have been on the books for too long. So if there's too many years of past taxes that are owed, if you see 7 years or 8 years of past, and a lot of times they'll tell you in the number of outstanding liens, that exist against the property, or outstanding liens versus liens that have redeemed. Sometimes you'll be able to see, but a lot of times they're going to be properties that have been on the books for too long, or that had no real value to begin with. So they're too small, or shaped weird, don't have a use, or maybe they're just a drainage ditch or something like that.
Yeah, those small strips of land, or different types of landlocked property. If the property has enough value in landlocked, with the lien, you're a little safer than you are with a deed. But yeah, I think that those are all going to be essentially pretty good points. Condensed structures as well is something you're going to want to avoid. If you look at a property and it's structured and you can see from the Google image that the roof is caved in, you're probably better off avoiding that.
Right. Yeah. I think all of those are pretty good. And again, if you're investing for interest rate returns, really just means you're investing in those that are most likely to redeem, which is going to be most types of properties. This just your average tax lien investing is really investing for high interest rate returns.
Yeah, and if you don't care about gaining property, you can look at states with longer redemption periods. You don't mind waiting 2 or 3 or 4 years, essentially, if you're going to get your return. So You know, you may get it after 6 months, it may take 2 years, but you can look at different states like that where maybe some investors may shy away because they don't want to have to wait 3 years before the foreclosure. As long as you're earning, you know, 16% per year, you know, you're good to go and waiting 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. You know, investing to acquire property is something that's more opportunistic. You know, you've got to kind of target different places, and something to look for in some of the states that have a lot of over-the-counter inventory. They may have a redemption period that basically works by a standard time period like 2 years, but they'll also add into it something like a 90-day redemption period from the time that foreclosure intent is filed, or something like that, so that basically property owners have a short window of time. In other words, you couldn't buy it and immediately start to foreclose. You know, they would force you to wait for a 90-day period of time before you could actually start to foreclose on it after you bought it.
Yeah, and there's different strategies that you can use where essentially there's some states where, you know, once that redemption period is ended, the county will actually issue you a deed to the property, or they're more friendly in their foreclosure strategies, or if they do have foreclosure that you need to do, essentially you're going to be guaranteed the property after the foreclosure, unlike you know, Florida, like Arizona or Nebraska or some of these other states where you're essentially going to be getting the tax deed, you know, once you've owned the property. But really, when it comes to properties that you're going to have a better chance, I think, you know, land is one of those things, because you're not having somebody who's living in the property. They're more likely to let it go.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things you think about it. You know, it's less likely to have multiple people, you know, listed as owners, so fewer people get foreclosure notices in the mail. You know, fewer people to step in and to pay it off. And yeah, I think if it doesn't displace anybody, if it's not affecting anybody that way, it also has a higher chance of going to foreclosure, because you know, again, it's, you know, what is somebody, it basically is not directly affecting anybody to let it go to foreclosure.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about tax sale investing is, you know, very rarely are you ever kicking somebody out on the street.
Yeah.
You know, and even in those type of scenarios, because we paid so little, we can usually work out, if, you know, if the person needs to stay there, work out a deal where they can continue staying in the property and paying rent or whatever it is. But usually that's going to be, you know, one in a 200 or 1,000 type of deals. This doesn't happen very often. In fact, I don't think we've ever in our entire time worked with somebody where they've just been kicked out on the street and had nowhere to go. Usually the type of properties that go all the way to foreclosure are ones where, you know, grandma died and maybe one of the grandkids is living in the property rent free, or, you know, some different type of situation like that, or where the person's in a rest home or something like that, where they've just let the property go, and you know, that's really the advantage of this. And if there ever is that situation, because we paid so little, we're in the driver's seat. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, it does put us in a really strong position. And yeah, like you said, it's not. I think a lot of people get the idea that that it is
predatory.
Yeah, there's some predatory nature to the investment, but the reality of it is, it just doesn't work out like that at all. There's so many odd circumstances or situations that lead up to properties that being lost, and ultimately, there has to be some kind of a collection method there in place, or nobody would pay their
accountability.
Yeah, if there wasn't some degree of accountability, then nobody would pay their property taxes. But as we were talking about these liens, I was looking actually at this part right here in Charlotte County, Florida. I was just looking at it earlier today, where they still have over-the-counter tax liens that are available. And just looking here, we could look at the list. They've got, I don't know how many, they've got thousands. And you can see for the tax years they've got listed here the numbers. And if we wanted, we could look at them based on tax year. And something else we can do is, we've got a couple different things we can click on with this list. It's kind of interesting because you'll get different results here if you click on different things here. The certificate number will give us information about the property, whereas I think the account number might take us somewhere else. But let's look at any of these. We've got $500 liens, basically, we're looking at here for tax year of 2017. And so now what's nice is that we can get a quick idea here with just this nice little pop-up that tells us a couple things about the property. I mean, tells us the tax balance, so that would be the original, the face value, basically, or the face amount. You know, the original balance was $312. We can see it's up to $500 now, basically, but we see the property's worth only about $3,300, basically. Not real high value there to it.
We can also see that there's 7 outstanding certificates on the property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if we needed to check, you know, we could go to the tax collector's website to see what those certificates are. But
yeah, we can look at the other properties here if you want
yeah.
to. You know, we'll look at some of the other liens. Maybe we'll look around for a lien that that has a little bit higher value, something that might be a little more attractive to
It's that $700 one.
And let's see
5,
here.
000.
Yeah, valued at about $5,200, and there's 7 outstanding certificates on it. 2 of them are redeemed.
Oh, so I wonder if that means that there's 5 certificates, you know, on it, or if there's a total of 7. You know, one thing about, I think it's 7 years in Florida, that if you haven't foreclosed after 7 years, essentially you're going to lose that money. And so, you know, you always want to foreclose by 7 years if you have Florida tax liens.
Yeah, if it doesn't redeem within that redemption period, then you have to take action there at some point, or eventually, you know, you eventually can kind of lose it. But yeah, in fact, what we can see right here, different counties use different systems. What's nice though is when we go to this portion here of the tax collectors portion of the website, maybe is what we're looking at. But it tells us the amount due in basically past due amounts or past liens, which is kind of handy. You know, so we can see a few here. If we wanted to see all of them,
hey, all is 8,000 right there.
Yeah, that's the total. That's the roll-up amount right there. Is $8,100.
So you know what this is showing us is the perfect example of what we call a toxic lien. You know, the property value is only $5,000 as far as the assessed. Even if the market value is twice that, let's say it's worth $10,000, you're still looking at $8,000 worth of delinquent taxes on this. And the reason is because people have sat on this property for so long. So, you know, if you had originally bought this tax lien when it was, you know, $300 or $400 and foreclosed on it, you know, within 2 years, you could probably have foreclosed on it for $600 or $700, and it would have been worth it, because the property does have some use and some value. But when we're looking at the cost that's involved in the amount of delinquent taxes, that's where that, you know, comes up, where each one of these liens is essentially earning 18%.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, we can see here that the last time that it had taxes paid on it were for the 2008, you know, tax year there, and
yeah, that 2009 is no longer payable. So whoever bought that certificate, if it was bought,
expired. Yeah.
Yeah, it's expired.
Yeah. So if it was purchased there.
So this person from 2011 essentially needs to foreclose on that immediately, or they're going to lose their money. But they're probably not going to, and it very well could be still owned by the county.
Yeah. In fact, you know. Just click on it. I don't know if it'll tell us here anything on it. Interest rate 18%, face amount. It might have a buyer.
I think it might be county owned.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, essentially though.
You can see that some of them weren't though, because there was one up here that had 17.5 or 14.
Yeah.
See, that person in 2016 ended up bidding on that tax lien, you know, and essentially ended up bidding on a toxic lien, and they paid $734 for it.
Yeah, they're out of luck because basically.
And look at that, somebody was actually competing with them.
Yeah.
To get it down to 14.7. So, well, somebody started bidding on it, and what's funny is when you're looking at online auctions, sometimes if they see you bidding on it, they'll automatically think you know something they don't know, and they'll bid against you. But we can go look at some of the upcoming auctions that are coming up. There's quite a few tax lien auctions coming up in New Jersey, and there's also going to be a ton of live auctions that we're going to be uploading to the website, like I talked about in if we go to the online auction section underneath tax liens, we can see some of the New Jersey online auctions. But Indiana has a ton of auctions coming up where they pay about 15%, but they have a 1-year redemption period, and essentially you can start the foreclosure after about 9 months, so that you can actually acquire the property within 1 year of the auction. So what we'll have to look for is any of these that are opening up around 8. Well, that was 8/27. There's 5/18, so that Cayman's open. You can click on that one, or 8/17.
That one's probably already happened, right?
Oh yeah, with 8/17 at Kearney's Point.
Yeah.
So essentially, there's a ton of New Jersey online auctions that are going to be taking place over the next 60, 90 days or so. There's probably 20 or 30 of them that'll be coming up. But one thing that's nice about the online auction websites, like we talked about before, is that it gives us the ability to, click on the parcel ID or the ADV number. I think it's this one over here. I think that one takes you to the New Jersey one where we've got to look it up individually. So, but right here we can click on this and at least, pull up whatever the property is and see some of the basics, the address. It gives us the map, so we can see.
Yeah, this one's for 2,500. 2,500, but it's valued at, sales price 275, valued at 93,000.
It's on a big lot, 1.5 acres. We can click on the map and see the map. You can see, sometimes you can see the certificate history as well. So it looks like it's kind of a big vacant piece of land, possibly. I guess maybe it could be that structure, because there was structured value, huh? Wasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, building value, so it's the building, actually. Probably that building right there.
Yeah, it must be this whole lot. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can see that about 2,000 in property taxes a year. It does have fair value to it. 93,000 is pretty good.
Yeah. And even some of these $400 or $500, $600 liens, there could possibly be good investments, in something like that as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking here.
God, that vacant land sure sold a lot for a lot at one time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if that. Yeah, it makes you wonder if that's accurate or not. But yeah, when it comes to the lower dollar liens, I think you try to pick out ones that have a good, seem to have a good value. But in some ways, though, with some of them, it's almost kind of a crapshoot. When it comes to whether or not they redeem. As long as you're picking out ones. Well, in fact, you're probably not going to run into a lot with some of these ones like these, because these are probably high enough amounts that most of these properties have got good value and they'll probably redeem here.
Yeah. Most of them are going to redeem.
That one's a house.
Yeah, essentially $128,000 on a $328 lien. It's probably a parcel lien, meaning that this is only 3 months of the year's worth of property taxes, or they paid part of their bill, but they didn't pay all of it.
Yeah, and you can see also right there under the additional unpaid certificates, we can see right there at a glance. It's obvious it's a good investment. It doesn't only has one other certificate, or maybe this isn't. Maybe this is the certificate that they're counting as unpaid.
Yeah, and from here, what we would do is we would, check out the address. We may check out the property on Zillow and see what type of value it has. But we would go through and do some of the basic due diligence on the property. But at that point, we're feeling pretty safe on our investment. Even this $5,000, $4,000 investment, $161,000. We can see it's a residential property, so we could check that address. We could check the map. We could do some basic due diligence on it. But once we've done that, you know, it's going to be a safe investment. In fact, I'll bet, you know, probably 80% of the tax liens on this list could be potentially good investments.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I'm sure this one, sure all of these would be great. I mean, for 5,000, it's you can see it's a nice property. It's, you know, it's right there on the state line,
Yeah,
Delaware,
water.
New Jersey, right there with that.
Yeah, and one thing as well, you know, is you're going through this list, because this is an online auction, you may look at it and see some of the vacant land that has good value, and look at those possible investments as well, because you're going to have a good chance of it getting paid off, but you're going to have a better chance of getting a higher interest rate. So maybe one of these nice homes ends up bidding down to where you're only getting, you know, 7%, but, you know, a good piece of land that still has good value you can get for 16% or 18%.
Yeah. In fact, this one's interesting. At all different amounts, the liens seem to be, you know, pretty good liens in general. I mean, even the lower priced liens are against properties.
Yeah, what's that $95 one?
I mean, that one's a partial lien too.
Yeah, $95 lien on a $171,000 value property.
Yeah, you know, they're just no brainers. They're definitely going to end up redeeming. There's, you know, almost no chance of them actually going to foreclosure.
Well, and one of the things about these online auctions is it's not going to take as much due diligence or research, and so you can participate in some of these online auctions, and if you don't get them at your price, you know, it's not that big a deal. You can register for the next auction, and you're not going to spend as much time, you know, as you would if it was some type of tax deed investment. We can go through.
Oh, that's what they are there. It's a sewer charge.
Oh, it's a sewer lien.
Yeah, it's a sewer lien. That's why we're only seeing, you know, that's why the lien represents just such a small percentage of the property's values, because the charge type we've got there. So this would be taxes there. Any of these S's here are for sewer, you know, fees, which means that basically all these liens are going to be excellent liens, because they're liens that are against, you know, very valuable properties.
Yeah, and the sewer lien is a tax lien as well. Essentially, it's just a tax lien for the utility versus the property taxes.
Mm-hmm. You know,
so they're still going to have the foreclosure right and everything else that any other tax lien would.
You know, they've got current number of bids here on some of these properties here. Yeah, and like you said, New Jersey's got tons of sales that are happening. You can find the New Jersey sales by going into the online auction section for tax liens.
You can see all these ones that are opening up in September. In fact, we don't even have them all. You know, we're still in the process of getting all of the stuff updated for September and October. So, you know, we only have part of them listed at this point.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of them though. They're not opening up here yet, but yeah, I think I found one of the sites too that was crashed earlier today. But yeah, there are just a ton of auctions so that are coming up, and not just New Jersey, but also there's several places.
Yeah, in fact, you know, I was looking at some properties at one of the Indiana sales today, and this is going to be a live auction. But you know, I was looking at some liens that were, you know, kind of expensive, but on some incredibly, you know, nice properties.
What the heck? I don't know what it's doing there.
Screen sharing is now paused.
I don't know.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know what that did. That was. There, we'll just go like that. There we go.
Well, it's essentially we're getting almost out of time anyway. But you know, really, there is a huge opportunity out there to start investing in tax lien certificates, to get started with tax liens. Even if you're doing deed investing, you know, it could very well be worth it, unless you're, you know, on limited funds where you're going towards deeds, to go out there and put some of your money towards some tax lien certificates.
Yeah. In fact, if you need any help with it, let us know. We're happy to help with lien stuff, and really, the majority of the time, lien questions, you know, can usually pretty easy to answer, and the investments always make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so. But that one is probably not 18.
Yeah, this one's still taking place, right? Or I guess I don't know how long the auctions run. It's probably still happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's still active.
I think they're usually the auctions happen about 30 days after they open. So if it opens on the 19th, it's usually the auction's about 30 days, pretty close to that. So where we could actually go to see where the auction date is. And
These ones are water fees on this one.
yeah,
The W's. So again with this one, you're going to have a bunch of partial
water and
liens.
taxes on some of them.
Yeah. What's nice about it though is that when you get little partial liens like this, like water liens, the value of the property is always going to be really high, and you've got an established property because they have utilities.
Yeah.
So you're pretty well guaranteed every time it's going to be properties that have value and use and that would be worth investing in, because somebody's not going to allow their property to go to foreclosure because of a $300 water lien.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we go back here real quick, I want to show you just kind of where, just where, where essentially we can go down here to bidding rules, and we can see that this auction is on September 18th. So we're going to want to go through and review all of the rules whenever we're participating in an auction.
Yeah, there are a lot of good tax lien auctions coming up, though. There's also lots of good stuff going on with the deed sales, and more of the online and over-the-counter opportunities there. So I think the number of opportunities just continues to grow, gets better every year.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight, and we will plan on seeing everybody here again next week.
Yeah, appreciate it, and talk to you again next week.